If a student fails to activate the string at the beginning of the note, what do you think the rest of the note is going to sound like? The issue that we deal with through articulation is compensating for inertia. So we have a string that's not moving, and then we have to do something to it to allow that string to vibrate. And that's what we refer to as articulation, the compensation for inertia. The longer the string or the heavier the string, the more activation force is required to activate the string. So think about your bass is on the E string. It's going to take a whole lot more activation force than violins playing on their E string because it's a lot heavier and it's a whole lot longer. I think one of the weaknesses of our method books, and particularly the Suzuki school, is that it starts the students out on higher strings. And for the violin, if you're playing Twinkle on the A and E strings, you may not be required to articulate for quite some time. So students can get away with playing in such a way that they don't ever have to articulate. And that sort of takes away from the accountability. So what if we added accountability back in by requiring students to play on their lowest string? Now, before we start getting into any of these accountability measures, we have to set up our first accountability measure, which is that the students need to set their bow and grab the string before they play anything. If the students aren't doing that, and if they're not making a conscious effort to set the bow and be ready to play, then all of this stuff that we're about to talk about is for nothing. So the first and most important accountability measure for articulation is have your students be ready to play and make that a part of the classroom culture. Students set their bow and grab the string. Two things, not just set the bow, but set the bow and grab the string so that they're ready to play. Once the students are in the habit of grabbing the string and being ready to play, my first suggestion to you would be to teach your students how to play short notes on their lowest string. Because what's going to happen is they're either going to learn how to develop articulation or there's not going to be much of a note at all. If you're just sliding a short bow on the E string on a bass and you're not grabbing that string first, there's not going to be an E coming out of that bass. There's going to be hardly anything coming out of the bass. So what students would do if they were longer notes is they would just kind of bow, and it would just take a while for the string to catch with the bow, and then all of a sudden we'd get tone. But if they're short notes, they don't have time to allow that note to develop. They have to make it happen immediately, and they're going to have to learn how to start grabbing the string. Now, just an aside, when students grab the string, it doesn't always have to be a vertical thing. They don't always have to press down into the string. They can grab the string that way for sure, but most of the time our articulations are going to need to be a little bit more subtle than that, unless we're just playing Bruckner all the time. What we're going to need to do is learn how to grab horizontally so that we grab the string and pull the string. And what that will do is we grip the string, and then as we pull, we release that grip once the string starts to vibrate. I recommend that you try lots of different articulations within lots of different dynamic ranges, okay? So can you use this articulation in a forte section? Okay, and then maybe more challenging, can you use the same articulation playing piano? How about pianissimo? Soft starts are tricky to set up, but they do a great job of creating accountability for your articulations. If you have to create a soft start, well, and you have no articulation, you're trying to start a note very, very softly, it's going to be a disaster unless you get a little bit of grab, horizontal grab on the string to activate that string, and then you can get good tone while you're playing softly. I also like to use multiple articulations per bow direction. I'm particularly fond of Larrey bowings because what will happen with the Larrey bowing is if you keep the bow at a constant rate of speed and you have the students articulate each note in this Larrey passage that they're playing, or an open string would work just fine for this, the students will either create articulation for each note, or it's going to end up being like a whole note or some like whole block of sound because they're not differentiating between each separated note in the articulation. So they're either going to learn how to articulate or they're just going to play a whole note. For left-hand passages, if I'm questioning the articulation and I'm questioning whether or not students are articulating with the left hand, I think that's what's creating the problem, I'll take the bow completely away and I'll just have them finger with the left hand and have them articulate and see if we can all hear the articulations with the left hand if they're pressing hard enough to be able to hear the strings ring. And if they're not, we work to create that. And then once we have that established, we'll add the bow again. And it's just amazing how effective that can be in cleaning up the tone, especially with slurs. The next couple of videos are demonstration videos that describe sort of how to get your students to do these techniques so that they can develop great articulation. And once you do that, it's likely to solve a ton of other problems within your ensemble. Again, I hope you found this content to be useful. I hope you like the demonstration videos, and I hope that by encouraging your students to articulate and working on that domain of music, that it makes every other domain of music much, much better for your orchestra.